who's taken up sculpting by choice. He started sculpting in his teens by using scrap metal, welding them into what he calls scraptures. In fact, that's what we know him for originally. And eventually, I think he started, architects started buying it from him, and it became slowly a profession. He's shown in many, many galleries include many of his public works are known to people, to those of us who live in Bombay. There's that big bull at Worli. There's the Mughal outside the Jewel of India. There's the rhinoceros at Nariman Point. And he's even made a small movie called Decibel, which was shown at the Kalapura Festival. He also dabbles in a number of activities like designing props and sets for experimental plays. He designs trophies. He loves yoga. He loves traveling. And according to the bio he sent me, he's currently solving a jigsaw puzzle also that's got 18,000 pieces in it. He also teaches children from all, schools, whether it's IB or NGOs. And well, let's hear from him what he has to say to us. Arzan, all yours. Welcome to
Thank you.
IES.
Thank you. So tell me, I'm only seeing the names of the students. They're all there, no? I can't see them, but
They're all there.
only there.
Students, can you switch on your cameras, please? It's a little disconcerting, I know, to talk to a screen.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. So basically, I give a lot of lectures here and there and everywhere. And today I've been asked to talk about the design process, my design process basically, and the way I look at it. So I'll take you through the whole series, of course. But as an architect, as a designer, you have to know that things happen sometimes which are planned and things happen abruptly also. Okay. There are so many discoveries, if you realize, which are come by accident. So just to give you an idea, I'm just starting on a very broad outline first. Just to give you an idea, if I am making a sculpture for someone and there's a lot of metal lying around, sometimes just looking at that metal lying around on the floor, you get an idea which is unplanned. You understand? So it's like this. There were ages back when I was working on this large Rhino for Seat tires. And I was, I think, almost on top of a 10-foot ladder, and we were working on top of the back of the Rhino. And of course, there's a lot of metal in the studio because you're welding away. There's a lot of scrap which is collected, etc. And when you look at the scrap, suddenly you find that there's a pattern inside. And then you suddenly go there and you start assembling that. So many times within your grand scheme of things, small design miracles happen within that also. But I realized one thing, that to design, of course, I have now a lot of experience. You're just starting out. But to design, the first step is to take the plunge and do something on paper. Okay. I don't know if you're still working with sketches and pencils and pens and all that, or you're directly on AutoCAD. But during my time, computers came in, I think, after I finished the 5th year in terms of architectural practice. And to me, taking a pen and paper right now is still more better than sitting on the iPad or doing something in Procreate or etc. etc. So it is faster for me because I was trained that way. But I would advise each and every student, each and every designer, every artist to have a small sketchbook with you. Small means literally this much, like a cigarette packet size small sketchbook and a pencil and a pen ready, and keep on doodling or scratching or doing something or the other at any time, however meaningless it might be, because that helps you form ideas. Believe me, it looks very stupid as to what my lines do, but when you do certain things on paper, it helps you sort out certain things in your mind and you form a sort of an aesthetic discipline of your own, which will happen over time. You're a first year student, you're just starting out. So basically, instead of looking at a blank paper or instead of just sitting in a room and blankly thinking, what you need to do as designers, as architects, is to take a pencil and start drawing. However silly it might seem, the first few lines that you do will be able to sort yourself out in the process. Okay. So having said that, there are so many things which involve designing, isn't it? I'll give you an idea now. I have not planned what I'm going to say, so of course it's my own work, so I'm just going to keep on rambling on. Anyone has a question in between, please ask me, because let's make this more interactive. It'll be more interesting for me also. Huh? So basically, for me, the idea is that I am doing sculptures now since more than 30 years. Okay, I started sculpting even before architecture. I used to go to scrap yards, collect a lot of scrap, keep on playing around with the scrap. I would see various different shapes in the metal and try to sort of, recognize what this shape meant. Like, for example, a simple bolt looked like the head of a human, correct? Then there was a washer which looked like a sombrero of a Mexican. Then things like that. Just very playfully, I would pick up things from the scrap and sort of try and recognize what the pieces were and start welding them together. Okay. So that's how the journey started in a very playful way. I had no idea that I would be selling my pieces ever. It just happened over time. It's just something that came about because my dad's an architect, still practices, and there are a lot of architect friends coming over home. So when you make small pieces and get them home, you get a critique from them. They tell you what is wrong, what is not wrong, how you should progress. Slowly, I got a commission work from architect Naushad Talati, and then it started the whole natural process. But currently, my design process, I'll tell you what it is about. I am doing 90%, not even 90, 99% of my sculptures right now are all commissioned. Commissioned sculptures means that I'm shown a space, I have to react to the space, I have to design the sculpture for that space. Okay. Now, who shows me that space? The client directly sometimes. Mostly the architect is involved if it's a large project, and then sometimes the builders also. I mean, or the government authorities. They show me an island, they say, fine, this is to be done. Now, when you see a space in an architectural project for a sculpture, the first thing you do is I see what the user is about. Is it a hotel? Is it a residence lobby? Is it a corporate office? Correct? Is it a hospital? What is the basic use? What is the building about? What is the architectural sort of piece about? Okay. So once you do see that, then you start understanding what the client is about. If the client is, like, for example, coming close to residential sculptures, you literally have to get to know the client personally. Does he like horses? Does he like figures? Does he like abstracts? What does he like, something religious, or is he completely averse to it? And what and all that, and becomes very personal. So you try to get to know the client. Now, if it's a corporate, just to give you an idea, I've done a lot of pieces for the Birla House, for the Tatas, for Goenkas. And the first thing you should realize is when a corporate house asks you for a piece within their complex, it is about power. You have to denote their power. You have to show how powerful the corporate lobby is, and how powerful his organization is. So normally I use stainless steel. Selection of the material also depends on that. I use stainless steel. I use very sharp angles. I sort of denote a lot of power within that form to give you these very scratchy edges and all that. And contrary to that, if it's a residence, I don't use steel because it's a very cold metal, correct? So that way, slowly, you sort of realize and you recognize what that space is about and design. Like, for example, in a residence, I was asked to do a sculpture near an entrance lobby. This was about 8 years back or so. I used wood. I used rosewood and I used a little bit of copper. The rosewood I use because of its nice lyrical form. If I carve wood, I can get very beautiful smooth curves on it. So I did a mother and child from that. So I actually carved the wood into a very smooth sort of a finish, grinded it to a finish, polished it. So you actually can sort of take your hand over the sculpture and feel how soft and how lyrical the whole thing is, where there are no sharp corners and all that. So that is a denotion. That is something that I use for residential sculptures. The copper was added in terms of a garment. I dare not use steel because, like I said, steel would have been too cold an element, correct? Too cold visually, I mean. Steel reflects, it gives you that very high-tech sort of feeling. So I reserve it for my other outdoor sculptures and all that. So that way, slowly as you go, you recognize what that piece is about. Like, for example, I have done in an open air scenario, I have done the bull right now, which is outside Worli on a traffic island. Now that is for IndusInd Bank. IndusInd Bank is a very, very powerful organization. They want to show their power. They want to show how long they've been standing there. They had a big anniversary coming up. And so what we did was their logo is called Zebu. It's the Indus Valley Civilization bull. If you see the seal of Indus Valley Civilization, there's a bull there with a lot of jowls and huge horns. That was the Indus Valley bull. And so I took that, and then what I did was, of course, I semi-abstracted it. But if you see it closely, sometime if you go and have a look there, the whole bull is divided into three parts in terms of its finish. So basically, it starts from the rear end, looking very organic, looking very actual, around the hind side and the hind legs and the tail. When it comes to the middle section, it looks as if it's got plates and it's riveted. This is to suggest the mechanical age, like how the Titanic was built and etc. etc. And then when you come in forward, there's a very computerized frame structure sort of a thing which I've done in three parts. So it actually sort of shows the progress of the bank in one emblem. In just that one bull, I've tried to show a couple of time zones which shows that the bank has grown towards that, you know. So now I would do that for a very powerful lobby. Then coming to Ambi Valley Sahara, where I was called to make sculptures. Now that place is a place where people come for holidays. People would come for relaxation. You can't have a large bull there overpowering the guests because they would feel intimidated. So there you go for sculptures which are slightly smaller than lifelike. So what I did was I did this series of frogs. The frog was their mascot at that time. They used to use it in a lot of places. So I took the frog, I made it about 4 feet tall, and then I spread it all over the place. So for example, in the dining room, the frogs would be eating. In the swimming pool, they would be sort of splashing in the water. In the park, they would be sitting and reading or playing chess. And so the whole theme revolved around the frogs. And then, of course, being a holiday place, the children would go next to it, take photographs, etc. They would identify with the frogs. I tried to make them a little playful, a little cute, a little funny, so that they don't appear intimidating to the guests. So you get an idea of how, if there is a hotel or an industry where there are going to be children, whether people are going to react to it, then you do a theme which is child friendly, of course, in your own style and all that. And when it's you denote power, you do something like that. To give you an idea, um, you see, abstracts, when I do abstracts, a lot of people don't appreciate it. And it's not that I don't do abstracts, I do a lot of abstract works. But people don't appreciate it, and I prefer doing public art, which is slightly figurative in terms of recognizable art, because a major part of our population is yet not trained to see complete contemporary architecture. So, just for example, like in the streets of Paris or New York or Mexico City or anywhere in the world, you see contemporary sculptures out since past 120 years now. They've been there. The eye gets trained to see them. The viewer recognizes contemporary sculpture, tries to understand what it is about, and he forms his own decisions. It is not necessary for every viewer to love your sculpture. That is not possible. It's okay if they don't like it. Perfectly all right. There is different gradations to it. It's like a movie. You see a movie, there are going to be 10 different reviews for it. Absolutely okay. It's a work of art. But the idea is that people should see it. We need more public art to educate the public, not by making them sit down and read about art, by just visually showing them art. And making them feel what contemporary art is about. Understand? So, in one place, coming to not using abstracts, this was in Surat. There is a very big, well, it looks like a mall, but they don't call it a mall. They call it an activity center. And what happens is out there, they have a lot of public and they use that place not only as a mall, but just to give you an example, if there's a large match, they've got a huge screen there and they encourage people to get their own food and sit in the lawns on chatais and watch the match. So it becomes like a full family outing sort of thing. It's not only a mall. It's a wonderful way of, as an architect also, as a wonderful way of increasing the usage of space, multiplying the usage of space into something that is beyond just people walking outside shops and window shopping. So out there, what I did was, knowing it's a place which is not used to absolute modern art, absolute contemporary art, I didn't want to throw something at them which would shock them. So what I did was, I did a series of 2 sculptures were given to me to do. So there's one sculpture where I see this whole family walking out of the mall. So the dad is carrying all the shopping bags and all that. Then there's the mother who's happy, and there's the kid who's pulling the mother to go back inside. So it's a very uh, family-oriented image which happens. You see it, you all immediately identify with it. Correct? So out there, imagine if I put a large, strong bull, it wouldn't work. People will say, "What the hell is this fellow doing here?" They would admire it, of course, but it wouldn't work in that context. Then in the other lawn where they encourage people to sit down, I actually did a metal chatai and 2 people sitting and eating, a father and a son eating sort of thing, you know. So I actually even managed to make the whole thal with the food in metal. It actually looked like food, you know, sort of. I just tried to give that little originality, but all, of course, painted in one color, not different colors and all that. So that way. So basically, a design process. Of course, there's lots of things. I've just said it. I'll welcome your questions so we can take this dialogue forward. Design process involves reacting to a space. As an architect, your job increases in the design process because, like I say, sculpture and architecture both are 3D arts, correct? Both of them are 3D arts. Both of them have all sides to see. They've got a plan, they've got an elevation, they've got a section if you cut it, everything. But the major difference is that architecture has a user function. And hence, you can't treat architecture completely as a sculpture, but you have to sort of incorporate the usage inside, which is the most important thing. Also, taking care of the aesthetics and the flow and the environment and everything else that comes in. You got it? So, basically, I always say architecture is sculpture, but you have to keep in mind the client as to what the client is about, what the site is about, what the weather conditions are about. Very much like sculpture, but in a sculpture, I can make a piece at my studio, and if I love it and no one else loves it, it's perfectly okay. In architecture, that's not possible because you're creating for a client. If you're making your own house, then you can treat it that way. But that user bit that comes in always messes things up because you have to please the client and try to sort of do something which you are proud of and the client is happy to stay. Correct? So there's this very integrated thing that happens in architecture design. I've not stopped architecture completely. I did one about 4 years back or so. So to me, it's wonderful because you can create spaces. It's like, to me, it's like sculpting, but then you're doing it for a user purpose. I'm not doing a sculpture and putting it there and saying to hell with it. If no one likes it, I'm okay. I like it and I'm going to keep it here. You understand? So that has to be taken care of. So I've got more. I'm still thinking as to how to sort of give you an idea via examples and all that. But if you have any questions at this point, do let me know so I can then add it to my. And the others, if you can put your video on because I'm seeing blank screens. So better to talk to faces other than screens. Okay. Any questions at this point? Anything, but don't worry at all. I mean, you all are in the first day. You can ask anything you want.
Sir, you said the user matters.
Yes.
So, what are the pointers that we need to keep in mind when we are listening to the user and we are creating a space according to it?
I think basically, to me, in architecture, of course, like I said, it's a 3D work. But to me, in architecture, the flow is the most important thing, the first thing that comes to my mind. So if I'm shown a space, the first thing I would like to know, let's just say I am on an empty plot of land. Okay? I'm on an empty plot of land, and the client says, this is where I want my dream house. Okay? And he doesn't tell you anything. He says, this is where I want my dream house, and he moves away. The amount of ideas that will come into you will be crazy. You have to harness those ideas. Instead, if you ask questions like, to me, a house would be like, the first thing in a house would be, where would I sit with my cup of coffee? What would I be looking at? At what height would I be sitting and what would I be staring at outside? I would determine it that way. I would determine the whole house on the various activities of the user. Okay. like for example, I'm just talking of a very imaginary piece of land out in the wilderness. Let's say he wants a bathroom that is partially open. You get these partially open bathrooms in resorts and all that. You sort of ask him, supposing the client is not into that at all, so you immediately negate that. Try to understand the client. Try to understand the client's lifestyle as to what he likes, what he does not like. Now, for example, to me, one of the most important parts is a space where I can see movies. I love seeing movies. I watch a lot of movies. So I would do that. So I would pay importance to that. Not only that, I would love a large desk, a huge desk, where I do my drawings and everything else and all that. And huge desk. So to me, my desk is multi-purpose. So the desk where I'm sitting right now in my studio is about 7 feet by 4 feet. Okay, something like that. I'll just show it to you. It's right here. You see that? Huge. So I have so much stuff and I work on so many things at one time. So I keep things open. I keep things here. I have my other sculptures on top. And so I keep on drawing and I leave my drawings here just to sort of spread them around. So every little nuance, every little activity of the user, for example, very big, huge consideration. Does the client cook herself or does she have enough help in the house to do that? So then you design the kitchen accordingly. You understand? It's so important to understand these small things. Very, very small. I remember when I was doing my internship, third year architecture, we had to do internship for 6 months. And I think fourth year or third year, sorry, I forget. Anyway, 6 months internship. I went to a firm called Darabi Mystery and Partners in Colaba. And I remember I was put on a project near Breach Candy somewhere where the interiors were being done. Okay. And the client, of course, the lady of the house, was into cooking, completely into cooking and into traditional cooking, Gujarati Jain cooking. Okay. And the amount of machines she had, like to grind the atta, grind the wheat, to sort of do something, and the machines which I had unheard of. And every time we would design a space, she would say, okay, but where do I put this machine? Suddenly she would draw a surprise. Or then you would again have to redesign. And so, okay, fine, but if I do this, I want to run this machine together with this machine. Then you have to do it that way. Every machine had to be at a different height. The pouring had to be at the top, the receiving had to be at the bottom. And that time the architect had said that you understand a lady's idea of a kitchen, you'll understand the full house. The rest of the house, of course, went at double the speed of that. But just to give you an idea how small nuances matter. Like someone, let's say, has a back problem, okay? And the treads of the staircase in the house, they have to be designed accordingly. So everything changes. Below the staircase changes. Supposing someone cannot reach a certain height. So there are standard heights, correct? According to the body, 30 inches for a table, 18 inches for a stool, etc., etc. But is the client okay with that? Or do you have to change all that? These are small, minute design implementations which are so important because the client is going to use it for a very long time. And that 1 inch sometimes might not matter to the architect if he's not sensitive. It definitely doesn't matter to the contractor. Contractors don't give a damn. But the client will suffer the rest of the life if that thing is not done properly. You understand? So I think these small nuances to get to know the client is very important. Literally like a friend, especially in residential work. Especially in residential work. In offices, it's another ball game. Offices, it's about speed. People buy offices, rent offices. They are counting their rents every day as to when they can start the office. So there it works differently. The whole ball game changes when you're designing offices. It is about speed, about low cost, about getting your services right, about getting your electricals, everything right. That is more important there than the aesthetics. I'm not saying the aesthetics is not important. You have to take care of the aesthetics, of course. That's what you're there for. But there, the importance is in servicing that space so everything runs well. So that's why, according to me, hotels and hospitals are two of the most, I think, challenging projects which an architect faces. And in fifth year architecture, I remember we had a hotel project to do. So there you understand that when you just go to a hotel and visit, it's a different thing. There is an equal amount of area at the back which services this entire thing. the plate, where it comes from the kitchen. The kitchen shouldn't be too far because the food will get cold, etc., etc. And the interconnection between areas have to be taken care of. So in one keyword, I would say understand the client. Sit with the client, talk to the client, literally live with the client to understand what he's about and what he wants. So compared to my line of work, of course, a sculpture doesn't take as long as a piece of architecture would. But by the time I finish my sculpture, literally the client has becomes good friends with me, literally. And we keep in touch till now. The pieces which I've done 10 years back, I'm in contact with the clients and all that because it works at a very personal level and you get to know the client immediately, you know. So that's what you have to take care of. Anything else? Anyone? Anything? Just give me pointers if you want, so I can also sort of base my talk on that. So another thing is, of course, finishes. Extremely
Sir,
important. Yeah. Tell me.
how do you decide the material of the sculpture?
Basically, again, to do with the space. Like I said, if it's hotels and corporate offices, I wouldn't mind using a little bit of steel, a little bit of reflection and all that. But if it's a residence, I go for more warmer materials like wood and copper and all that. Okay. And even iron. I started working with iron. So all depends on the kind of work that I'm doing, a kind of sculpture that I'm doing, and the location where it's at. Who's going to use the sculpture, that is the most important thing. So that's the way I actually decide the material. It's a part of the design process. I don't design the sculpture and sketch it and then decide. I'll just show you something I'm doing right now. So I don't decide the material then. As I'm designing it, I'm sort of going about it. If you can see this sketch I've done here. See that? Very conceptual sketch, very rough. So you see these rectangular blobs here, these large rectangular blobs which I've shaded. Now that is acrylic. That is transparent acrylic, and the small circles I've drawn inside are music CDs. So now, and the lines are metal. So basically this came as an inquiry from a musician, a music lover also. And he has got a series of 800 CDs which are lying there, which he wants to use in a wall sculpture. As you know, CDs are now useless. You don't even need to sort of store them anymore. Everything's available on the net. And so just in order to sort of not throw it away and do something, he asked me if I can make a sculpture, and we're working towards it. So as this for residence, so I'm using copper pipes. I'm going to use copper pipes and the resin. So the resin, of course, will be transparent, completely transparent, and you'll be able to see the CDs through that. See that? So even the CDs, they will not be flat. There'll be multiple layers and all that. So you play around with that. First, of course, you give a concept, and if the client is okay, then next comes the estimates and the costing and all that, which is also a very, very important part of the process. And then you start making the sculpture, you know. So currently, just in terms of the work going on, I've got a large piece from last year. Of course, you know, because of the lockdown, everything got shut, and it's been 1 year late in fixing. I'm going 1st July, I'm going to fix the piece in Bangalore. It's a large outdoor piece. Besides that, I'm doing 8 pieces for one residence. So that is not only sculptures, it will be overkill to have 8 sculptures from the same artist in the whole house. So what I'm doing is starting with the door handle, which is a human form. The door handle, which is a human form, which goes in from one side and comes out from the other. So from outside, you see his torso and his hands, and from the inside, you see his waist and his legs. Okay. So starting from there, then you open the door, and there's a console table with 2 humans holding a large light. Then there is a very subtle sculpture of a Buddha that I've done, which I do now in resin, so that it merges with the wall. I'll be able to show you a photograph of that because I just installed it. Give me a moment. I'll just show you. I'll show you from my phone. At least you'll get an idea. So this is what it looks like. It's on the wall and it merges with the wall. Okay, I'm just showing it to you. 1 minute. Okay, there. See that? It just comes out of the wall like that. So this is resin. Now coming to why I decided the material and why resin over here, because any other material would be a waste because I wanted it the color of the wall. Got it? And then I'll show you that same day. This is in the daughter's room, just to give you an idea. This is in the daughter's room. So she wanted to do graffiti, and she wanted something like a machine finish. Okay. So I took MDF. I got pieces cut in water jet cutting. See that? the pieces which are cut in water jet cutting, this will be painted blue. Okay, the whole pink that you see, the MDF will be painted blue. So it looks like a part of the wall, and then the graffiti is going to come on top. You know, so it's like this. It's a bed back. See it? It's a complete bed back. So you basically react to an environment. I'm going to show you some more works just like that to give you an idea. And then there's one piece which I did recently, which is for a residence. And of course, like I said, know your client, correct? Now, a large part of his living room is the bar. He entertains a lot. And he has a wonderful collection of alcohol, and he loves mixing drinks, and he loves bartending. So the bar becomes an important part of his living room. Correct. So he wanted a sculpture for that. So I selected bronze because I'm experimenting a lot in bronze casting recently. The bull, if you see it in Worli, that is a bronze cast. Okay. So I did a sculpture called Friends for him, completely out of bronze, and I've patinaed it in different ways. You see that? So this sits on his bar. It's about 30 inches tall. If you'll have a closer look at it, see that? It's one material, it's cast, but because of the different patinas I've given it, it has this different sort of look to it. So you react to a space. I keep on repeating that, sorry. You react to a space. You react to a client, and then you design accordingly. You know? Is that, you got your answer? The person who asked about materials? Good.
Yes, yes. Thank you, sir.
Anything else? Yeah. I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you. Are you on mute? I can't hear you. No.
Me now?
Yeah. Now I got it. Yes.
So just I wanted to ask, what about the lighting? What lighting we should include, or does lighting play an important role?
Lighting plays a very important role, extremely important role. And of course, while you're designing your sculpture, you also design the lighting. So if I'm doing an outdoor sculpture or a wall sculpture, the architect asks me what sort of lighting do I require. Okay. So I suggest that. But nowadays, I don't know if you've heard, but you get very good lighting designers. So I take help from them. I can probably suggest what angle the light can come at, whether it is white or yellow and all that. But if you want more detailing, then the lighting engineer can actually suggest you how many lumens, what is the lumen count, what is the, what do you say, the level of lighting. It should not reflect, whether it should be focused or whether it should be flooded. You understand? So all that is very important. And of course, if you're putting it outdoors, in morning the sunshine will do the trick for you throughout the day. But in the night or in the evening when it starts getting dusky, at that time, of course, you require the lights, and the right kind of lighting definitely improves the sculpture. It is very, very important. And personally, if you ask me, I like lighting a sculpture from below other than from the top. Always I find that when you light it from below, it looks very, very dramatic, and it increases the value and the overall look of the sculpture.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Even architectural lighting. Do you see what miracles people are doing today in terms of architectural lighting? You know, it's wonderful. And you see buildings which are lit up by the building people themselves who haven't taken any help, and then you see the buildings which are lit up by lighting designers. There's immediately a difference. Like for example, if you want to have a very good idea of good professional lighting, try to see the Rajabai Tower these days. Wonderfully lit up, and it's done by a proper lighting designer who has studied abroad. And if you want to see a bad example, you see what they've done to VT Station. Okay, completely messed it up. It looks like someone's done a Halloween castle or something like that. Red, blue, yellow, green, and I mean, I don't even know who gave them the idea to light such a beautiful building up this way, you know. And hats off to the university people, the Rajabai Tower people, to have got the idea to get a proper designer to do it. You know, it's important, of course. You know, you can even I sometimes, if there is a lighting designer involved, I move backwards and say, okay, look, this is the piece. I think it should be this way. But then you give that person the chance to design it the way he wants to. You know, that is important.
Arzan, is Shilpa here. I just want to
Yes.
come in for a moment. Yeah, I
Yes.
remember at one of your talks, I remember you talking about the setting of your sculpture, which you've already spoken of. But I remember one example which you gave of that rhino at Nariman Point. You had originally thought of putting it in, in a very craggy, rocky place. And
Yes.
later on, somebody went and
Correct.
put up
Correct.
flowers all
Correct.
around it.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So
I'll tell you about
the
that.
importance, yeah, yeah.
Sure. So basically, this is the important. This is important when there are too many designers involved. Okay. Now, when you're designing a sculpture and when you're putting it somewhere, you have an idea as an artist as to what the surrounding should be. Correct. So when I put the rhino, initially the whole idea was that it would be running on rocks. See, it's a rhinoceros. It denotes power. It is the logo of Seat tires, and it has to sort of show the ruggedness. A rhino in no way is a gentle animal. Even if you look at it, the kind of skin it has, the hardness, the armored plates on its body, everything. It looks it's a dinosaur which is sort of mutated into this beast. And to denote that, I use very sharp edges, iron, and I showed him charging ahead on 2 feet as if he's actually lunging forward. And I put rocks there. I put a little water initially, and we left it there. It was wonderful. Then when I started seeing it over a couple of months, couple of years, they had the same clients had called a landscape designer, and suddenly that person was growing beautiful trees around him and plants with flowers and lantanas and shoe flowers and things like that, and beautifully how you say manicured bushes and things like that. As a garden, it worked very well, but to the rhino, it completely destroyed it. Instead of I kept on saying, I told the client, I say, instead of a charging rhino, he looks as if the rhino is walking through a garden and is in love or something like that. He's smelling the flowers around. He was completely covered with these beautiful flowers, red, yellow, green, and all that, and it completely marred the effect. So there, extremely important as a designer to be able to tell your client what it should be. So in your case, it also depends if you design a space as to what artwork goes there, what kind of furniture goes there. You understand? If you have a very modern contemporary architecture and someone puts some furniture which is not gelling with it at all, then the design gets marred in the long run. Of course, there's a very delicate control you have over a client. It all depends on how much control you have over the client to be able to authorize that no, this is not the kind of furniture that's required here. I want you to put something like this. You understand? So there, what I'm trying to stress is complete design. Complete design is very important. Think as a total designer, not only as an interior designer or an architect who only takes care of the facade. Always think of overall design, because anything that you do impacts the other. You understand? That's what Shilpa was asking me to talk about. So it's interesting. You get
Yeah,
these
yeah.
various responses from people and all that. But finally, they removed the rhino and they've taken it somewhere in Juhu, but it's still to be put up. But it's interesting how the artwork works. So tell me.
I have another
Yes.
example, which is a personal one with you.
Yes.
I was in first year and you were in third year at academy at that Parel College.
Correct.
And one of the exercises, I don't think you'll remember it, but one of the exercises in first year that we were given was a tangram puzzle, with the triangles and
Yes.
squares and rectangles. And in first year, we were asked to make some sort of patterns with it. And
Correct.
some of us, being in first year, we were just, like picking up, playing it, throwing it on the table, and whatever the first design that came up was
Correct.
the design that we took up. And I remember you had come to our class and you had told us, if it's accidental, it can't be designed. I don't think you remember it, but that is a very pivotal thought
Yes.
for many of us in first year.
Yes.
So I don't know if
Yes.
you want to elaborate on that any.
Basically, of course, that works for architecture, less for sculpture, because if you see sometimes they put in
Yeah.
contemporary art galleries these days, you really wonder if it is a pile of construction materials that has been just kept to work on, or is it an actual sculpture? So that's what conceptual art is about. Very debatable. But in architecture, that works lesser because, like I said, that user function is so important that, of course, you might hit on a design that is accidental, but you have to purposely make something and it cannot be completely accidental. Like, for example, I'll give you an idea. There was one site ages back. I was not the architect. And I was called there to do a sculpture somewhere in BKC, if I'm not mistaken. And there were panels of glass there. And some of them, toughened glass, okay? And some of them the client wanted frosted, because he said few of them are okay if the view goes through and through. It was inside a lobby, rather a complex planning and all that. And he said a few of these, I don't want them to be see-through entirely. A little bit of visual barrier should be there. You won't believe what happened. By error, if you see cracked toughened glass, it smashes into a wonderful pattern, but it remains by itself. It doesn't fall down because it's got a film of PVC inside which holds it together. And the way to do it is, sometimes if you want to try, is take a panel of toughened glass, put it on the floor, take a nail and just tap it. It'll form beautiful cracks. So basically this happened by accident, and this started, and the client liked it so much, he actually asked the contractor to do about 8 panels like that, where he actually smashed the glass where these crackers came in. Okay, so that was good enough for him. That is accidental. It doesn't work all the time, but it just happened. So basically, sometimes, like I said, giving to things which happen naturally. A lot of times things happen with meaning, but giving to things which happen naturally, because sometimes it works out for the better. Don't negate it, don't always bank on it, but if you don't keep on experimenting, the mistakes won't happen. That's what I'm trying to say. Your experimentation has to be at such a high level that you keep on getting results which are good, not good, very bad, and then you sort of evaluate. It all collects over here, and sometime or the other it comes out in your design. So like I said, keep on sketching. I mean, completely meaningless sketching, lines, etc., etc. I'll show you one book here. I've got one book here which I started doodling in about 8 years back. This was just to give you an idea. Small notebook. I keep on taking a pen and ink, and I keep doing this. See that? And I'll show you. I mean, this is a little bit architectural. This is where my planes come in. So I love doing this. I'll show you more. So yes, things like this. Just a spiral. But you have to keep on experimenting. Literally, don't. Okay, look at this one. This is very architectural. Okay. So I love doing these 3D diagrams. It's good when you're not designing for a client. You can do whatever you want. But just to give you an idea, and believe me, it helps. It will help in sorting yourself out as to what formation is about, what lines are about, and it's wonderful how you can sort of take those pointers and then move from one space to the other. Something as simple as this. Just lines. You see that? Everything that you do will help. Even a line will help. You take a paper and just keep on sort of drawing, even that will help. So, like Shilpa said, your mistakes also will happen if you do something. No, if you don't do something, nothing will happen. So if you have a plan to do, start drawing. It's okay. You can't get it right the first time. But if you don't put things down on paper, nothing will happen. That's what I'm trying to say. Any other questions?
So,
Also, another thing, yeah, tell me.
as a student, and now you already have so much experience, so you are talking in context with the user.
Yes.
So now as a student, how do we approach, as we don't have any user? So how do we approach the breakdown and the design idea?
Oh, you'll get a user very soon. Don't worry. You're in the first year right now. You're doing basic design, etc. When you, okay, imagine a user. Imagine a user. Okay, you're drawing. Okay, you're doing stuff. Imagine you're doing a space for an artist. Imagine you're doing a space for a doctor. Okay, just imagine right now. Right now, you don't have a user, fine. But don't worry. Very soon, second year and all that, you'll start getting user modules where you'll have to design the spaces, everything for them. Correct? So right now, when your architecture is not, when your faculty is not giving you a user, it is very good because your mind is freer. The idea is to first go large. The idea is to first think large and then come down. Okay. Don't ever, on the grounds of practicality, not think and clamp yourself. Sort of think the craziest of things first. Think completely, like they say, out of the box, literally. Think completely out of the box first, and then using the practicals of structure, etc., you come down to your actual sort of stuff, you know. And of course, you'll get a user. Otherwise, right now, imagine a user and do it. So what? Imagine you're doing it for yourself. How would you want that space to be? Okay. I remember our first design project in school, college in second year or first year. Last part was designing a nursery school. Okay, superb, correct? Designing a nursery school is for children. Of course, it's a very difficult thing to do, but we could go and make it very playful. So it was a very good project to introduce as a first step because we could make it very playful. I did complete open classrooms with a tensile roof at that time, and what all I did, I don't know. I mean, very unpractical, but what I'm saying is at that time, right now is not the time to think of absolute practical stuff. Okay. Like, for example, I'll give you an idea. Initially, when I used to do my sculptures, I used to be asked, how do I clean them? It's got a lot of details. Can you imagine if our temple architecture and the temple architects were asked that question? Why are you doing so many details in your carving? It will be difficult to clean. So do not think absolute practical all the time. Sometimes it is very good to go a little wacky and then sort of tone it down a little. Okay. So your user will come. Your user will come very soon. Don't worry. So what was I saying? I was thinking of, okay, any other questions? And then of course I'll add to it. Anything else? So okay, you think about keeping on schedule. Okay, there's another thing which I've discovered, which I'm going to tell you about. Like Shilpa knows, I come from an age which never had computers. Okay, Stone Age I come from. So I still do my drawings with pencil and stuff like that, which works very well for me. So nowadays, I'm just telling you about this. If you want to experiment, if you have an iPad with an Apple Pencil, I would highly recommend that you try this app called Procreate. Okay, it's an app which is used for drawing, and it's not a replacement for your pencil and paper. Okay, the beautiful lines that you get with a dark pencil on paper, you cannot match that. But if you have Procreate, the kind of work that you can do on it, the kind of experiments that you can do on it is wonderful, and you will be able to handle it much better. I've learned it just 1.5, 2 years back, and I've started taking classes also on it. But it is such a wonderful tool for an artist, for an architect. Of course, you've got your CAD and other programs which I vaguely know about. But for an artist, it's a wonderful thing to experiment. And remember, as an architect, you all are all artists as well. Do not let that part go away. Do not let the artistic side of you diminish in terms of your practical professional life. You know, you have to be sort of in terms of in tune with aesthetics. I heard a lot of people saying that when they try to make an architectural project or an interior project very functional and very workability correct, okay, in terms of spaces and ergonomics and all that, aesthetic goes for a toss and they can't pay attention to aesthetics. Rubbish. Everything that you do has to have aesthetics within its form, whether it's simplest or not. Even a living room, a minimalist living room with one white table, white floor and white walls can look interesting if the form is handled properly. So depending on whatever your usage, whatever your function, aesthetics has to be taken care of. And I'm talking of aesthetics as disciplined, mature architects, and not as an interior decorator, as so was called, who comes and then paints the wall and tries to make it look better. That is another part of design. Focus on form. Focus on what that space is about. Do not say this space is looking, when design is looking empty, only if I color this wall with some Varley painting will the space look good. No, that cannot be done. Your space has to look good, devoid of art. Your art only enhances it later. You got it? Aim for form. Your your light is such a big tool in terms of giving shadows to form and all that. And another thing, most important, a couple of days back, I had a talk with two architects from Dubai, students, okay, and they wanted to know what to do, etc., etc., etc. So I mean, it's worth telling you about it right now. Just give me a hold on 1 second. Can you give me 1 second? Someone's at the door. Sorry. So something that I always keep on telling all the students, and I think is very important. One is experiment fearlessly. Okay. Do not worry about what will happen if you do this, if you do that, and all that. Please experiment fearlessly, literally. Okay. Number two, observe. That's two things which I say. Observe, when I say observe, as architects, as people who are dealing in aesthetics, whether it is fashion design or interiors or car design or whatever, observe things. When I say observe things, of course, now you have the internet and you can sit in your house and watch the world go by, literally. But when we didn't have the net, when we had to go, I used to visit art galleries. When things open up and when things come back to a good level of safety, please go to art galleries regularly. You might or you might not like the work. That is immaterial. But see what is happening in the world of contemporary art. Okay? Definitely look at other architects' works. It is the most important thing to do. Not because you want to copy from them, but you want inspiration. Each and every architect has their own techniques, their own basis. I'll tell you about this. When I joined first year architecture, I kept on hearing about Corbusier and BV Doshi, etc., and Korea, etc., etc. And I was seeing the photographs at that time, wondering, I said, what is this? I said, why are they making us learn this? You know? And slowly, as you develop your aesthetics, as you see what modern contemporary architecture is about, that's when you realize what work these masters did. Form oriented. They used to take care of light and weather and everything. Like I just saw one of Corbusier's buildings, which is the post colony or something like that in Ahmedabad. I'm sorry, I'm not getting the name right. I'll message it to you. But what a wonderful work of architecture that was. Now that I saw it, I started to appreciate it more after so much. I was seeing so much. So keep on looking at works. And one architect who I hugely admire is Tadao Ando, the Japanese architect. Have a look at his works. Phenomenally form oriented, and how beautifully he creates spaces, you know, within the whole landscape and all that. The different views you get. Suddenly you come to two walls where you see a gap of only 4 inches and you can look out of the view for that. And, you know, it works on feelings. It works on not just saying, is my building looking good? But from the building, is the outside looking good as well? You understand? Two important things. So that is what it is about. I was just talking to my Procreate. I'm taking the Procreate class these days. I've got one in the evening, and I was making them design a sculpture. Of course, I'm only on the 4th turn right now with the Apple Pencil. And so why I'm saying this is, I think of scenarios. I think of instances. I think of situations where they adapt and they draw. So I designed the sculpture. Now I said, okay, fine, let's put this sculpture in New Jersey. Okay, and let's do the backdrop. Why New Jersey? New Jersey is a very, very okay place. There's nothing in it. But the most wonderful thing about New Jersey is you can see New York. You understand? By itself, New Jersey is nothing. But people go to New Jersey to see New York from there. You understand? That piece of architecture has to have interesting points to look out from. I'm not saying, I mean, if you're surrounded by ugly buildings and you can only see that, it completely defeats the cause. But if you have a wonderful site, create picture windows where you don't need to put paintings, but that rectangular cut in the wall shows you a moving image every day, you know. So think of inside out and outside in, something to do with complete architectures I'm talking about, you know, equally important. And when you're designing, if you have these points with you, believe me, as you go along, you won't have to have a checklist that, have I done my spaces right? Check. Am I seeing outside? Check. No, everything will work together. Another thing I recommend, it goes more into sculpture than architecture. Keep a piece of plasticine or clay with you and keep on playing around with it. It is wonderful. Just keep on bending it, melting it, molding it to do sort of different forms, inside out, outside in, curved, round, squares. Another piece of equipment you can play with, which I find very important, is wire. Just stiff wire. I keep on bending and making things from stiff wire. And wonderful, you get these angles. Get wire which is like a slightly malleable, but not that pokey one, and something which stays when you bend, Very, very important. So these things you play around with. And like I said, experiment fearlessly. If you're working with that wire, if someone comes and asks you, I think this is useless, what are you doing? It's not. You're doing something with it. If you get attached to that little piece of wire or clay and keep on playing around with it, nothing bad will emerge from it. Believe me, it'll always help enhancing. These look like very frivolous things to work with, but they always help in establishing aesthetic level in your mind, aesthetic discipline, which will only grow over time and which will only grow by observing things and experimenting. Got it? Very important. Anything else?
I would just like
Yes.
a point, sir. Like you said about the open windows and even about the internet. When I was small, there was like no internet as such. Means we used to not have so much access to it. So one day I was just walking through JJ School of Arts outside, and because it is open, I saw a man sculpting, and I almost stood for an hour seeing him only sculpt.
Yes. Good. Good. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, it is. To me, any process of creation is wonderful to watch. Absolutely wonderful to watch. You know what I do? Like, of course, I have a very, very disciplined working pattern, much not exactly as an artist would be. Very frankly, artists are very erratic. My timing, but I have a very disciplined time schedule to work on. So what happens is in the afternoon when I'm having my lunch, okay, I put my iPad in front of me or I put the TV on and I'm watching YouTube videos of any creative process. So creative process, I mean, even looking at factories, at the way they make things, you have these programs on Nat Geo and Discovery where they show you these phenomenal factories, and it's wonderful. It's a design process. It's a making process, And if any of you all have Netflix, if you have access to it, there's a lot of small mini series that called Extraordinary Homes and stuff like that. Phenomenal to watch. Phenomenal. Like I said, you need not fall in love with every one of them, but you can form your own ideas, Another architect who has come up recently in recent times, who is doing quite some good community work, if you can write the name down, it's Bjark Ingels. BJ, it's a Swedish, so the name is funny, Bjark, BJARK, Engels or Engels, something like that. If you can Google it and find it. Some very good community architecture is doing. Excellent in terms of connecting spaces and all that. Good stuff. So keep on observing. It's good. Yes, I agree. Any creative process. If I see a potter's wheel also so many times, I like to see how the whole process is being molded and all that. Also, I've seen it hundreds of times. Creation is a wonderful thing. And creative people will always be happier than non-creative people. Remember that, because their mind works in a different way, Good. Anything else?
I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know if it's possible, but is it? Can you show any of your works from the sketch to the finished product at all?
Yes, I can. Yes. In fact, I'm decided to take you for a walk outside my studio. I'm at my studio right now.
Oh, great.
I've just done my cabin.
Great.
There's a little bit of a mess in the cabin because the window that I put had got a leakage, but ignore that. But I'll show you the rest of my cabin. And I'll take you out for a walk through the studio where all the work is happening. And I'll try to show you the sketch to the main form also. Give me a moment. So I'll show you some. 1 second. Let me get up from here. Just hold on a moment. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, let me first take you out on a walking tour. Okay, I'm going to reverse the camera. Can I? It did? Okay, fine, it reversed. Okay, so I'll start from the cabin where I am. I'm just going to put some lights on for you. Hold on. Okay, so basically, this is a door which I've done from beaten metal. You see that? Full stainless steel door. The reflective stainless steel door that I've done. Completely beaten metal. I collect a lot of stuff. So what I did was I made a slight niche over here where I have all my small collectibles. So everything that is here has meaning to me. It's not just collected or stuff like that. Everything that is there has some sort of a, like for example, this little piece here. Sorry, where's the camera gone? Yeah, okay. This little piece here is a ancient mechanical lock. It's a combination lock, you know. So this belonged to my great granddad. So everything that is here has got some sense, some meaning. You understand? Like this one, this particular piece, you see, I picked it up from MoMA, New York. It's like a twisting sculpture which you keep on playing around with, you know. And of course, here is one of the invitation cards to one of my first shows. I made it from metal. Okay, so these were actually my invitation cards made in metal. This is, of course, one of the recent ones. And then coming to my library, I'll show you. So I needed more space at the bottom, at the ground. So I took my library on top. And then I made my own ladder, which is like this. You see that? This is my ladder. So it basically moves from left to right. And this is my huge, large workstation where I keep on doing my sketches and all that. And out here is the sketches of all the works that are going on right now. Got it? So I have to keep an account of what is happening outside in the studio space. A few more of my close personal books and small ones, which I keep here. I just love them. And these are from all my shows. So you see all this. This is from all my shows. I'll give you a closer look of that so you get an idea. So it's a collection of stuff which I have done. So I've just opened out the brochures and framed them. Yeah. I'll take you out now. I'll get you the sketches. I'll just have to find them, but I have them. Don't worry. I'll definitely find them. So out here. So this is. So if I just turn back for a moment, you'll see the entrance to my cabin. And I've just started putting stuff here again. Like I said, I've got a lot of small stuff. So I just keep on attaching it to the wall as and when I find it. You know? Got it? Then I'll show you this. Now these are getting ready to go for a fitting. These are made in mild steel. They are a part of a whole console table. So a couple of them hold the table and a couple of them hold the lights. They're still not completely done. Up here is a mock-up of a sculpture of a bird that I've done, but they were multiple. There are about 20 of them. So this is what I've done. I'll take you in through the workflow now. So basically, this is the whole space. You see that 2 more of them are here. They're getting painted. And just to give you an idea of what the humans are doing, it is this. Can you see this drawing here? You see that? That's the way it is. So there are about 7 humans holding up all of this. This is the sketch of the Buddha. I showed you the final of the Buddha. This is the sketch. See that? This is the sketch of the Buddha. Okay. So this particular piece out here, which hangs here, is a model of a 25-footer that I've done in Pune. It hangs from the ceiling. It's about 25 feet diameter. It's about 3.5 tons. And in Pimpri, actually, that's where it is. So currently, also doing these very rock kind of tables over here. If you see the forms, so these are all parts of a very amorphous table that I'm doing right now. And I'll show you one more. Yeah, you see that? So I'll give you an idea of the very sculptural table. like this. So it's getting clad in what you call teak wood right now. Here, this is the model. I just saw it, so I'm showing it. This is the model. See that you work on. Got it? And if you look, all this is the stuff which, and it's incomplete. And the reason I've hung it up is because I need to see it all at one time. If I don't see it and it's on a loft or it goes somewhere hidden, then it loses its whole meaning. So it's got all these forms which I keep on playing with. There's a lot of human forms here. You see that? A lot of human forms here, which sometimes belong to a sculpture which I opened up or just made the human forms and you have yet to do the rest. Got it? So that's the way it works, you know. There's one more. Everything's tucked in somewhere or the other. You see that? There's a little horse here. And right now, currently, if you see this hand here, see that? So it's all a part of a carving and everything, correct? And I've just sort of removed all the half carvings that I've done and just put them together here. So the whole studio it's a work in progress. It happens slowly. There's a horse head, a metal horse head here. Yeah. Got it. So, and of course, like I said, I'm like being organized. So, whether this project I'm handling, I've made a very detailed list, if you see, along with drawings and all that. Got it? So, everything is written down, everything is in place so that you don't miss out things, you know. And there's one head of a Buddha here, which I'll show you. Got it? This is a bronze head that I've done. I mean, every corner has something or the other, you know. So that's it, basically. And let me try and see if I can find some sketches which have recently been done into sculpture, so I can give you an idea. Give me a moment. Give me just a moment. I'll put this here. Give me just a moment. I'll just get back. It's right here. I just have to find it. Okay. Okay. Don't worry. Okay, I'll show you something from the phone. I'll give you an idea. So I've got my sketches and my. How do I reverse the? Okay, there it is. Okay. So I'll just show you from my phone. I've got a few sketches here and a few of the finished products also. So it will give you a good idea. Just give me a moment. Okay. Here. I'm going to put this camera right here like this. You see that? This is a sketch of a very contemporary cross. Now, the client wanted a cross. Okay. Now I'll show you the actual piece. You see that? I've drawn pieces of wood together with a center ring and all that. Now I'm going to show you the main piece. Give me a moment. You can think of questions in the meantime which you want to ask, and not a problem. Here. So I've taken a video of that. This is the finished piece. See that? Multiple woods together. There is teak, mahogany, rosewood, and cedar. Okay. I'll try and find more for you. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please let me know. So I mean, as every artist loves his studios. Okay, here, one more. You see the sketch here? So it's called the Tree of Life. I'm going to show you a closer view of it. It's called the Tree of Life. And I'll show the actual work now. I deal a lot. I do a lot of photography as well. So I actually sort of, yeah. This is also a video, but I'll give you an idea. This is the full finished product. See that? Loads of small details like the birds. This had wood, copper, lead, and iron inside. 4 or 5 materials together. Got it? This is what it looks like. So it's you have to give a client a sketch, of course, just to get give him an idea of what you have in mind and whether you have understood his brief properly. You understand? And then you progress from there. It also works in architecture the same way. You understand from him, you give him a sketch. There is a lot of back and forth sometimes. Sometimes it gets approved immediately. You know? Anything else?
So,
Yes.
do all your installations that are in public, especially require demarcations?
No, I didn't understand the question. Require demarcations means?
In the sense they require a boundary or something that's, making it stand out, or it stands on its own?
Oh, no, it stands on its own also. Like, for example, the ones which I did for Ambi Valley, they didn't have any demarcations, any pedestal, nothing. The frog stood here and there on the floor. Now, if it's an important piece and it needs to be highlighted like the Indus in bull, then there is a pedestal of 10 feet and then the bull goes up. All depends on the kind of importance you want to give the piece, whether you want to make it look mammoth and huge or whether you want to look at small scale and just put it on the floor. All depends on that. That's a part of the design as well. Got it?
Yes.
Anything else?
I just wanted to add on. Recently, I watched a Netflix series, The Abstract. It is called The
Yes,
Abstract.
I saw that. Yes.
It is also very nice. The designing process, the thought
Of course.
process, it is
Of course.
very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Yes, it basically hinges on the design process. Yes, it is excellent. Anything
So
else,
just
Shilpa?
want
Yeah.
to ask,
Yeah.
like you, whatever work you have shown us, it is really playful, and does it also shows your personality? It reflects your
100%.
personality.
100%. Always. Definitely always. Because when you're doing stuff, so a lot of people say that, there are some artists who only depict very grim, very dark sort of situations, but I don't like that. I like doing stuff which is very playful, which is very alive, which is happy. And I think so everything, yes, reflects in that, within that itself. Correct. You're right.
I don't know,
Sir,
Arzan, if you
actually, I
have
saw
your.
Sorry.
I don't know if you have the piece that you've called the laptop.
Oh no, I don't have that. No, it was sold ages back. It was sold ages back.
That
Yes,
was
yes. Yeah. But it's good fun. I mean, designing is absolutely good fun, and it sometimes there's a break in the creative process. Also, it's not like it's always flows, but it's a part and parcel of the game. Anything else?
Srishti, you were trying to ask something?
ma'am, I was just
You're on
saying
mute, I
that
think.
yeah. Hello, can you hear
Yes,
me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Sir, I just surfed through your Insta profile this
Yes.
morning.
Yes.
So I saw you cycling that one will cycle. So these
Unicycle.
activities also help you to influence you or something like that?
Yeah, why not? Of course, it frees up your mind. No, it's something that you want to do, which is unusual. So it's part of your lifestyle, correct? So what you saw,
Yeah.
you must have seen Arzan Kambata, right? The Insta page.
Yes.
Or there's
Yes.
another one called Arzan Studio, where I put up all my works. So Arzan
Yes,
Studio is where all my works are there, and Arzan Kambata is where I do all my photography and my other stuff and all that. So have a look at both. But yes, it is a part of the process. It's not that when you're cycling, you're thinking of designing and all that, but it helps you to maintain a neutral mind. Let's put it that way, So you do a little madness, you do a little drama, you do this, and you do it for yourself. You don't do it to show others, You do it for convincing yourself. That's important, So everything is a part and parcel of the design process. Yes, I agree. Traveling and seeing places, correct? It is a part of the design process. You're observing things. You're getting a different climate. You're getting a different light. You're getting a different food. It all sort of acts on you and builds up your sensibilities.
Sir,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
it was like an asking, it's like a question. The living tree that you showed just now, the image,
Yes.
that there were little birds and those springing curls and all. So were they those taken from your observation skills, or were they taken from the little sketches that you made?
So when you observe, it's not that something that you observe comes out directly in your design the next day. It's things which collect in your mind. Sometimes something that you've seen 1 year back, 2 years back can get instigated and come out in your design. So I sketched it out this way. This is the kind of exact visual that I sketched out. And I said, I want this exact thing. That's why I did it this way. You understand? So it's from my observation. Yes, I attribute everything to what I see around and what acts on me. But I cannot pinpoint as to when and what I must have seen for me to be able to do this drawing. You understand? There's no direct link.
Just from the subconscious mind that
Yes,
have
completely.
seen.
Correct. From the subconscious mind. Yes, that's it. You're right. Correct. Anything else?
Sir, I wanted to know when exactly this idea came into your mind that, okay, I don't want to be an architect, I just want to be a sculptor. And what inspired you majorly to become a sculptor?
I think nothing was overnight. I mean, I did my architecture, but the sculpture projects I got were far more than the architectural projects. So slowly, I shifted away from the architect's office to the sculptor studio. You understand? It was not an overnight shift, but I always wanted to become a sculptor even before I joined architecture. Okay, but usually parents will not allow you to just sit and keep on welding without any educational qualification. So they said you have to do something or the other. Architecture seemed to be the most viable sort of a thing. It was a 3D art. My dad was an architect, is an architect, and so I said, okay, chalo, let's start off on this journey, and it was good. It was very, very helpful to me, So the thing was overnight decision that I want to do sculpture only. It always was from the beginning. Architecture just came in between, and again sort of took a slight backseat. It didn't vanish, but it took a backseat. Got it?
Sir, I have
Yes.
a question. So a lot of time when we are designing or in the process of designing, we get stuck. And I've
Yes.
observed different people, different artists have their ways of overcoming the block. What's your preferred choice or method?
Move away from it completely. Move away from it completely. Completely disassociate yourself from it and come back with a fresher outlook. If you're sitting on it continuously, it bogs you down. Move away. Move away. Change your location, change your space, go away, do something else, and then come back to it with a fresher outlook. I think that works. Completely negating it from your mind first and then coming back to it. So do something else in the meantime. Not with something that is not related to architecture also maybe, but just break away for it for some time and then come back to it.
It does, sir, and later you get a completely unexpected output.
Of course, definitely. Anything else? Shilpa, anything?
No, it's been wonderful hearing you again after so long. It's been great.
Thank you.
Anything? Yeah. Anything you'd like to put up as a last word to the kids? I think you've
like two
given
things,
wonderful
like I said.
insight. Yeah.
Experiment fearlessly and just keep on seeing. Don't only see art related stuff in architecture. See completely different stuff also. Right? Go to a wildlife sanctuary for all I care. Go and see things. Everything will collect in your mind. See good things, see bad things, read good books, read bad books, see good movies, see bad movies. Everything will collect and you'll form a very good opinion about everything in your mind, which is what will help you build up your strong aesthetic and your planning background. That's it. That's two things which I have to say to all students.
Absolutely. Okay. Anyone has any questions or? All right. Anyway, that's been a great
Sure.
talk, Arzan. It's
Thank you.
always great
Thank you.
listening to you. It's always great looking at your work.
Thank you.
And I do hope to have you back again sometime
Sure.
soon.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank
Sure.
you. Thank you
Sure.
once again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. See you. Thank you. Oopsie. How do I close this? Sorry, I'm so bad at this.
It's okay. We're all from the Stone Age.
Okay. Hold on.
Okay, so that was a great talk, and it relates a lot to what we are going to do next for your design. Though I'm going to have, Vivek, is it okay if we have a 10-minute break? I think that was a great talk,
Yeah.
and I think we need a little time to assimilate it. So 10 minutes, it's around 9:20 or
Yes.
something right now. We'll meet exactly on the dot of 9:30. All right? Yeah. Thank you.